Okay, sorry about last week's music. I guess unrequited love was not a popular topic. But after a long and cold weekend, the sun is out today, so it's time to join me with a tasty beverage of your choice close to hand while we take a look at this month's Hoya updates. And before we get things underway, I've got a bunch of stuff in bloom. And let's start with the first one, which is my Hoya davidcummingii. And it started blooming. And there's one that hasn't opened yet. There's another peduncle in here. There's another peduncle down there. There's another peduncle down here. Another one that hasn't opened yet. And the scent of these to me, it's a little bit like cinnamon and a little bit buttery. I don't know. I think it's a really nice smell, but then I also like Hoya lacunosa, and not everybody does. But yeah, this is always a good bloomer. It needs a drink right now. I haven't gotten to that side of the room yet, but it's a good bloomer. It shouldn't be expensive to find. It's not particularly flashy or, splashy or variegated or anything like that, although I'm sure you can find anyway. But yeah, it's always been a good bloomer for me. So yeah, I'm really happy about this one, and we're going to give it a drink right as soon as we're done with this. Next up is my Hoya honglenae. And it's got gorgeous leaves, and it's blooming. Let's see if I can get it to turn without, but I have close-ups of these. It's blooming for the first time. This one's only been here, this is about 6 months now, and it's put out a bunch of new growth. There are 2, 3, 4 peduncles, but this is the first one to bloom. So yeah, that's very, very cool. I'm happy about that. I think the flowers are absolutely tiny and really pretty. The close-ups will show you just how cool they are. And then, I've got Hoya leoensis, which is in bloom. And where are the blooms here? Oh, they were just closing up. So they've closed up today. I have pictures of them when they were still open. So they're only open like 3 or 4 days, but they're kind of pretty. And I have them, I will have close-ups over here on the side. The leaves are really cool. They're big. They're kind of teardrop shaped. And this one, no, there's moisture. Okay. But it's been a really cool growing plant. So yeah, that one's, I'm happy about that one. And next up, very cool, is Hoya mamasa. And those blooms in there are absolutely tiny. There's a little cluster of them all hanging side by each. I would say there's 20 of them in there. Close-ups on the side here to see them, but that's next to my thumb. And there's another blooming peduncle down here and one back in there. The leaves on this are really small. I'm really pleased about how this is doing. This has been very forgiving. It's gotten dry a couple times, and it hasn't even, I give it a drink and it bounces right back. So yeah, how are we doing? Oh, good, there's moisture in there. But this is doing really well. That's turned into a really nice little plant, and it branches readily. So thumbs up on that one. And honglenae, leoensis, davidcummingii, mamasa. Finally, let's see if I can do this without causing a disaster. My monster, Hoya obovata, is in bloom. And there are 2 peduncles. There's one there. And there's another one back in here. And I will put, come on, Close-ups off on the side of the blossoms. They're very, very pretty. I don't really... There's a very light scent, and it sort of makes me think of ivory soap for some reason. In a good way, not in a bad way. You know, the old ivory soap. Nectar on my nose. Yeah, but they're very pretty. I like that maroon color in the center. This has just turned into a beast of a plant. I've had this one for quite a while. It apparently likes where it's growing. I sent off these big long vines over here. There's another peduncle up there. And it's off. But it's doing well. So yeah, we're pleased about that. So yeah, and that's what's in bloom right now in the Hoya room. And the first Hoya up, celebrating its 1-year anniversary here, is my Hoya vangviengiensis. Now, vangviengiensis is native to southern Yunnan in China and to Laos. It was first collected in 2010 in Vang Vieng in Vientiane province in Laos, and was published in 2012 in Webbia Raccolta di Scritti Botanici, which is Webbia, a collection of botanical writings, and it was published by Michaela Rhoda and Nathaniel Simonson. And this Hoya is almost entirely epiphytic. It doesn't really start off on the ground or go anywhere else. So it's not completely unique, but that's an interesting fact about it. The leaves are very, very pretty. And I should have close-ups of what the leaves look like. They've got a really nice glossy texture, slightly pubescent on the back, very smooth and shiny on the top. There's a slightly raised central vein and some side veins. And yeah, it's just really pretty. This big leaf here is measuring in from petiole to tip at 4 inches or just about 10 centimeters, which is kind of neat. This one's done okay for a year. I think if I had given it a little bit more attention, it would probably be doing better. And I also think it needs a trellis. These leaves are very heavy, and they're not quite rigid, but they're right next to it. They're firm. And I think if this had something that it was grabbing onto, it would do a little bit better. Because sometimes it seems like Hoyas will send out a really long vine with nothing on it, and it's looking for something to grab onto, and it won't put out leaves until that vine grabs onto something that can support the weight of the heavy leaves. And I think that's what may be going on here. So I'm going to put this on an optimistic trellis and see if we can't get a little bit more growth out of it. But it's done really well. It hasn't died. There's a little bit of light damage. It crawled down over one of the grow bulbs and got a little too warm. But other than that, it's doing pretty well. So yeah, I'm happy with the results. With luck, I have a picture of what it looked like when it showed up over here on the side. If not now, sometime you may have seen that. So we're making headway with this one. I think it's going to be pretty, and I think that new leaf here is just amazing. That's a nice sized Hoya leaf. So yeah, very cool. This one came from Felsuma on Etsy, and this is Hoya vangviengiensis. Next up, also here for a year, is my Dischidia GPS-88. Now, The accession number GPS-88 is just something that someone slapped on this plant. It was originally sold as Hoya GPS-88, but it has been determined that it is a Dischidia. And it's also been determined that GPS, which is the accession sequence for Gerard Paul Shirley, isn't valid. He didn't apply it. It's not his. Somebody used his accession number sequence, but he didn't do it. So no one's really quite sure where it came from. This one has some scarring on it, and I think that's a form of edema on this plant, because it's in a place where I don't always readily see it, and it got a little too dry. But the leaves are very, very interesting, very cool. And I should have close-ups of the leaves over here. And at some point, I'll throw in a picture of what it looked like when it first arrived. But it's done very, very well for only being here a year. A year? Yeah, for only being here a year. I think it was pretty much just this when it first arrived, maybe just this section down here. So this is all new growth. This is one of two that I have. They have these gorgeous leaves. I just think that with some texture in them, slightly raised central rib, the leaves are running about, where's my ruler? Where's my measuring tape? They're running about, I'm going to say, 1 3/4 inches or about 4.5 centimeters long, and from side to side, probably about 1/2 inch or maybe just under 1.5 centimeters. So yeah, I usually don't have any trouble with Dischidia. They usually do really well for me. And this one is no exception. So yeah, even the other one I have, because I ended up with 2 of these, has done great guns. So yeah, it's a really cool plant. Definitely worth checking out if you like Dischidia, or like small leaf things of the Hoya Dischidia variety. Yeah, this one's very cool. This one came from Gigi's Greenhouse on Etsy, and this is Dischidia GPS-88. And now we're into plants that have been here for 2 years. And my first one up is my other Hoya Wilbur Graves. Now it's Hoya carnosa Wilbur Graves. So as a species, Hoya carnosa is native to South Central and Southeast China and Hainan Island, to Japan and the Nansei Shoto, to Laos and Taiwan. And it was first published in 1883 in the Flora of British India by Joseph Dalton Hooker. And this one came from my friend Mona. We occasionally swap plants, and she sent me a cutting of her Wilbur Graves, and it's a very, very pretty one. I should have some close-up pictures of the leaves. My experience with Wilbur Graves is that it's a great plant. Sometimes the leaves revert. That just happens, not with Wilbur Graves, but with lots and lots of Hoyas. Especially the splashy, flashy ones. But I found that once it gets established, it's a ready bloomer. My other Wilbur Graves, it blooms, as long as I keep up with the watering, it blooms all the time. It's in bloom right now. There's at least 3 big peduncles of blossoms on it. So if you're looking for a carnosa that will not make you wait forever for blooms, Hoya carnosa Wilbur Graves is a good one to try. This one should probably be doing a little better. I had it set up in a rather small pot until I figured out what I was going to do with it. Because the other one I have growing up on an optimistic trellis, which wasn't optimistic enough. And I thought this one, I'd like to see this one trailing. It would make a nice contrast. So it took me a while to figure out just I mean, I knew it was going to trail, but did I want it in an organic mix? Did I want it in self-watering? Did I want it in pond? And I stumbled on these little self-watering pots, which I like because they're transparent, so I can see the water level in this. It's a wick-based pot, and I have this growing in my generic pond mix. So once I figured all that out, I set this up. It's right now, this summer, it's living in a north-northeast facing window, so it gets a lot of bright indirect light and some very little early morning sun. It gets my nutrient solution regularly, and it's doing fine, you know? I think it was a rather small cutting. I mean, it was a decent cutting, not complaining about the cutting, but it was a small cutting when it arrived. It rooted up well, it's doing great. And I think that Wilbur Graves has gotten less expensive recently, so yeah, that's a good thing. So it makes it more affordable and it's something worth trying. With luck, I've already shown you pictures of what it looked like when it arrived, and I've shown you close-ups of the leaves. But yeah, this one came from my friend Mona at Plant Therapy 1860 on YouTube, and you can also find her at Mo Plant Therapy on Palm Street. And this is my other Hoya carnosa, Wilbur Graves. And next up here for 2 years is my Hoya finlaysonii EPC 317. Now, finlaysonii as a species is native to Brunei, to Kalimantan and Sumatra in Indonesia, to Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak in Malaysia, to Singapore and Thailand. And there's a note on the herbarium sheet that says Singapore, so it was probably found near the tip of the Malay Peninsula. It was first published in 1834 in Contributions to the Botany of India by Robert White. And EPC 317 is most likely developed in Ratchaburi, Thailand at Epiphytic Garden. And I got this one because it was supposed to be a small leaf finlaysonii, and it's clearly a finlaysonii. And it has done pretty well. Luckily, I have a picture over here of what it looked like when it first arrived. And it's grown fairly well. It took it a while to get settled in, like all finlaysonii seem to want to do. I don't think it's happy where it's living right now. There's some sun stress that's showing up on some of the leaves. And that's because it's living in my southeast facing window. It's right there. So even that little bit of morning sun might be just a little bit too much. It doesn't seem to be living its best life. So I may try and find someplace nearby. Maybe pull it back, and there's other things that could go forward in that window. I'm not entirely sure. The leaves on this one, the large leaf, which is apparently how big they can get, is measuring approximately 5.5 inches from petiole to tip, and 5.5 inches is about 14 centimeters, and about 1 3/4 inches or 4.5 centimeters in width. It also needs a better trellis. This was a make-do trellis when it started climbing. So, yeah. It's doing okay. I wish it were doing better for 2 years, but it does have a lot of leaves on it. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed on this. The leaves are rigid, like credit card rigid, with a very slightly raised central vein and some slightly raised side veins. It feels pubescent on the bottom and somewhat glabrous on the top, but I can see on some of the newer leaves, there's some fuzziness to them. So yeah, I also found 1 or 2 mealies on this. So we have treated it. It has also survived flat mites. So maybe it's on the up and up now. We'll keep our fingers crossed for it. But it's a pretty enough plant. It hasn't been any difficulties. As I said, it's a finlaysonii, so they can sometimes take a little bit of time to get established and decide that they are happy. But once they do, they're no trouble. You know, they're just good, sturdy plants. So yeah, pleased about this one. This one came from Gardino Nursery on their website, and this is Hoya finlaysonii EPC 317. Next up is my Hoya krohniana silver splash. Now, krohniana as a species is native to the Philippines, and it was first published in 2009 in Fraterna, Official Bulletin for International Hoya Association by Robert Dale Kloppenberg. And this was another gift from my friend Mona. And well, it's a mixed result. The vine is about a meter long, a yard long. Part of it got near the grow bulbs. I had it in a spot where it was growing near some other stuff, and I didn't keep track of how quickly it was growing. And so it took off and grew off the edge of the shelf and then right down near the grow light. And so a lot of the leaves I lost along there, and then it just kept on going. And the leaves are very pretty. Let's see if I can do this right. The leaves are very pretty, beautiful splashing on them. I do like krohniana. So what I may do, well, I have to do two things. I'm going to take some cuttings, and I'm also going to move it into a larger pot. When I first got these cuttings, when Mona sent them to me, and there's a couple others I'm going to talk about too, they were nice small cuttings, so I used to use these little 4-inch square pots. What is that, 4 inches? Let's see. Well, the internal space is about 3 by 3, which is about 7.5 centimeters by 7.5 centimeters. And these are self-watering pots, and I set them up with my generic pond mix. What I found with these pots, the plants outgrow them very, very quickly. And my experience is that when you're putting things in an inorganic mix and self-watering, I don't seem to need to worry too much about overwatering or overpotting, putting it in something that's going to hold too much moisture, because the inorganic mix simply doesn't. So I don't use these much anymore, and I need to move this plant in particular, out of this little pot. So I'm going to do a chop and prop back into a nice pot to, oops, somebody got damaged. Back into a nice pot to make a nice little full planting of this. But, 2 years it's done really, really well, Mona. If I'd been a better steward, it would look even nicer, but it's going to look nice in the near future. So yeah, this one came from my friend Mona, and you can find her on Palm Street at Mo Plant Therapy. And this is Hoya krohniana Silver Splash. Now, if you get to know my friend Mona, and you really should, you'll find out that she loves lacunosa. She loves lacunosa. So one of the ones she sent me was this Hoya lacunosa mint. Now, lacunosa as a species is native to Brunei, to Java, Kalimantan, and Sumatra in Indonesia, to Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak in Malaysia, to the Philippines, and to Thailand. And it was first published in 1827 in Bijdragen tot de Flora van Nederlands-Indië, or Contributions to the Flora of the Dutch East Indies by Carl Ludwig van Blume. And the remarks on the herbarium sheet say Malaya, so it was probably found on the Malay Peninsula. I'm guessing. Don't quote me on that. That's what the herbarium sheet said. So this has turned out pretty well. Again, it needs to be up potted. It needs to go into a larger pot. It's had a couple bouts of wet and dry, and not in a good way, but it has bounced back. The leaves on the whole are, say, 1.5 inches or just under 4 centimeters long. There is a long one here that is about 2.5 inches, but the norm seems to be the other. It has vined. It has done really well. So this one needs to go in another hanging pot. And I'm going to do some rearranging this summer in the plant room, I think. I've got the top half of one set of grow shelves full of lacunosa and krohniana. And I've got another set of grow shelves that I think I'm going to rearrange and put in these 3 and move some of the others over there too. So I have another top section that's all hanging stuff. So we're going to put this in a larger self-watering pot. It's growing in my generic pond mix in this little pot, which when you get a plant this size, in this size pot, it doesn't hold enough moisture to get you through the week. So it can be, especially in the summer, the plant room now is like running 80, 85 degrees. So it gets nice and warm in there and the plants just use up that moisture. So yeah, I'm gonna take better care of this one, Mona, and hopefully next time you see it, it will be looking even better. But thank you for this. This one came from my friend Mona at Mo Plant Therapy on Palm Street. Oh, and it's Hoya lacunosa. And one more from Mona, and this one, I really like this one. And this is Hoya lacunosa, Louisa's silver. Now, I'm not going to run through the whole species thing about lacunosa again, but this one has done pretty well for me. I think perhaps part of the key is that this was growing in a different part of the plant room where I saw it, when I saw it regularly. The other ones were kind of over there, and yeah, farther away from my desk. So I didn't see them as regularly. But despite all that, it's doing pretty well. That's a decent amount of growth for a couple years. So I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to up pot this to a larger self-watering pot, put it on a grow shelf hang it on a grow shelf with lower lights, and see if we can get some decent growth out of this thing. Because I'm not always a huge fan of silver plants, but I think this one's really pretty. So I want this one to work. And we're going to see what we can do about that. Get more of those, really, really pretty leaves. I should have pictures of what all these have looked like when they first showed up, but yeah. I was interested in this one before Mona sent it to me, and after I got it, I was really glad about that. I think it's really, really pretty. So yeah, this one is Hoya lacunosa, Louisa's silver, and this came from Mona on Mo Plant Therapy on Palm Street. Also here for 2 years is my Hoya species UT033. Now I haven't been able to find out too much about this one. The UT is the accession sequence for, and I hope I'm pronouncing this well, Utai trisukon, and so it probably comes from Thailand. The leaves are very pretty, And the blooms are supposed to be really pretty too. I've seen pictures of them. They're like this bright green corollas and a pinkish corona that's kind of striking. But I haven't seen any blossoms yet. And this one's had a bit of a rough way to go. It's got moisture and it's got a decent little root system. It's growing in my generic pond and a self-watering pot. And this one really got hit by flat mites when I had them a few years ago. And I isolated it a bit because it didn't seem to be bouncing back. And I wanted to give it some specialized sulfur treatments to make sure. I don't think, right now I have it living in my bedroom, so it gets a decent amount of light. I've got southwest and northwest facing windows in there, so it gets a good amount of light. It's pulled back a little bit, but I don't think the average temperatures in that room are what it really likes. So I've got to make sure we're all clear and see if I can get it back in the plant room. Should have a picture over here now of what it looked like when it first showed up. I think it wants the warmer temperatures. Looking at where it comes from, it most probably does, but yeah. So I'm going to give it another good going over, make sure it's pest-free, and then see if I can move it back into the plant room, see if I can get some growth on this. Because this leaf and some of these leaves are new within the last couple of months. So it wants to grow. It's just not getting exactly what it would like. And I'm going to see what I can do about that. So yeah. This one came from Garden of Hayden on Etsy. And this is Hoya species UT033. And next up, a Hoya that's been here for 4 years, one way or the other. And that's my Hoya rotundiflora. Now, rotundiflora is native to Myanmar. It was first collected in 2009 by Toril Nijhuis and published in 2011 in Phytotaxa by Michaela Rhoda and Nathaniel Simonson. And I first got this 4 years ago, and it did really well for me. And then one summer, I moved it out here to the porch, and I had it in a spot where I couldn't see it very well. And I think it got overlooked several times. I should have a picture over here on the side of what it actually looked like when the original plant showed up. But when I noticed that something was wrong, the leaves were just all curled up and it looked like it was on death's door. And I thought I was going to lose it. Lose the plant, not lose my mind. That's been gone for a long time. But I thought I was going to lose the plant, so the only thing I could do at that point was take some cuttings. So I took 3 cuttings and to see if I could root them. And they all rooted, and all the cuttings bounced right back. And I thought, well, good job. So that was 2 years ago that I got the cuttings going, right? 2 years ago. So I'd had the plant for 2 years. It died, or it was about to die, and took cuttings. So it's been 2 years since then. And in the meantime, I ordered another rotundiflora because I really like the plant. And that one came, that one was doing really well, and I decided to let that one trail, and I thought I'd have this one climb. And I think that's kind of a neat look. It needs some trellising work because it's growing up a storm. So I think I need to, I thought it had peduncles for a while. It's got these really neat sort of rectangular shaped leaves with raised veins on them. The leaves are running Let's take a look. Let's say they're running about 1 3/4 or 4.5 centimeters from petiole to tip, and about 3/4 of an inch or about 2 centimeters side to side, on average-ish, sort of. This is just done really well. So I think I need to put it on a full optimistic trellis, although I don't know where that's going to go when it happens, but it needs that. And do some trellising work because I've got these vines that want some support. So it's a good one. I don't always see it offered for sale, and I don't know why, because I think it's really interesting. I think it's really pretty. It is fairly forgiving, and it tends to bounce back. I mean, I took 3 cuttings, and the 3 cuttings survived, so that's really good. And they've put out all this growth in 2 years, so I'm happy about that. The original plant came from Love String Garden on Etsy, and these are cuttings that were taken 2 years ago. And this is Hoya rotundiflora. Next up, a Hoya that's been here for 5 years, and that's my Hoya curtisii. Now, curtisii is native to Brunei, to Kalimantan in Indonesia, to, I don't know who that was, to Brunei, to Indonesia, Kalimantan in Indonesia, to Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak in Malaysia, to the Philippines and Thailand. And it was first published in 1908 in Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, Part 2, Natural History by George King and James Sykes Gamble. And the note on the herbarium sheet says Penin's Mall. So they probably discovered it, or whoever discovered it, whichever Westerner discovered it, on the Malay Peninsula. And I had wanted one of these for a long time and never really found them until I had made a run to up into Stoughton, Massachusetts, to the IKEA store, as you do, and stopped at a big box store that was nearby. And just thought I just wanted to run in because I'd never been in that store, and sometimes the different big box stores have different selections of plants. And I walked in, and there was a small 4-inch pot of Hoya curtisii. And I picked it up by the hanging basket, and it weighed way more than a pot of Hoya curtisii should weigh. And it was planted in a peaty mixture, and it was terribly overwatered. So I brought it home. It was like, there were 2 of them there. I looked at them both. And said, that one's coming with me. Brought it home and then started the drying out process. I left it in the original pot for a while. I pulled the sides of the soil back and slipped paper towels in there to start wicking out some of the moisture, just to try and get the soil drier before I started moving it around. And then I moved the plant to a net pot in bark and sphagnum and put it in a cover pot, ceramic cover pot. And it's been there ever since. And I think it's done pretty well. I have it on a small stand. My experience with curtisii is that it wants a super, super airy mix. I think it's not going to live its best life in soil. And my watering experience is that you want to water it and let the water run through that mix. You don't want a lot of it hanging out in whatever that mix is. And it wants a decent amount of light. So it appreciates a good drink on a regular basis, but it doesn't want its feet sitting in any kind of gloppy wet soil. It wants a really airy substrate. Mine is living in front of and just to the side of a set of grow shelves with grow lights in them. It's on the bottom of an old bird bath, the two-part bird bath where there's a dish and then the stand. And the squirrels broke the dish, so I brought the stand in and it sits on that. And it's done pretty well. It branches, it grows. I give it a little bit of a drink every time I water in the plant room. And it's just done fine for me. It has not bloomed yet. And occasionally, an old vine will die off. And that happens, but it's just not been any difficulties. It hasn't argued with me too much. It wasn't happy at first when I moved it to the bark and sphagnum mixture because you try and clean off as much of that peat as you possibly can, and then you settle it in that new mix. Actually, I worked from the outsides in, laying in pieces of the plant because it was just a pot of curtisii cuttings. The leaves are small, which is one of the cool things about them. They measure about 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters from petiole to tip, and about the same side to side. When it gets a decent amount of light, it does look as if there's a slight margin to the leaves. It has not been a rampant grower for me, but it's been a steady grower, especially once it got established. So, yeah, if you come across one of these, and the original plant came, it was in a big box store, so it came from that big plant company. I don't know if they're still making it available, but definitely worth looking for. I mean, I think that's just really pretty. And sitting, on its stand, it's a really nice trailing effect. So, I think that would be that'd be a good, just let it do its thing. Hoya gonna do what Hoya gonna do, and curtisii is one of those. So, yeah, this one came from a big box store, and this is my Hoya curtisii. And the next one that's been here for 5 years is my Hoya latifolia, outer variegated. Now, Hoya latifolia is native to Brunei, to Java, Kalimantan, and Sumatra in Indonesia, to Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak in Malaysia, to Myanmar, and to Thailand. And it was first published in 1837 in A General History of the Diclimidious Plants, comprising complete descriptions of the different orders, together with the characters of the genera and species, and an enumeration of the cultivated varieties, the scientific names accentuated, their etymologies explained, and the classes and orders illustrated by engravings, and preceded by introductions to the Linnaean and natural systems, and a glossary of the terms used. Which sounds pretty comprehensive to me. And it was published by George Don, and the notes on the herbarium sheet say Malaya, so Westerners probably discovered it on the Malay Peninsula. And this has just turned into a beast of a plant, and I really, really like it. A lot of people think of this as being Hoya macrophylla, but as Miro explained to us all, it's not. It is a latifolia. Macrophylla is a different plant. And a lot of people use the descriptor albomarginata, but that's kind of a pretentious thing from the Victorian era. Albomarginata is not part of the name of the plant. It's simply a descriptor that means white margin. So, yeah, it's just outer variegated. This one has just done really well. I have, what's going on in there? Oh my goodness. Huge leaf growing inside, of course. I have this memory from childhood of leaves that look like this. And so I think at some point, I probably saw this in a dentist's office or a doctor's office without knowing what it was. And when I saw it again as an adult, I said, it was like, oh, that's the plant. That's the plant I remember. So I ordered one and have not been disappointed. I just think that's really pretty. It grows like crazy. I mean, it's on a super tall optimistic trellis. And it's in my generic pond mix and a self-watering pot, a non-wick based self-watering pot. And I have it growing in the plant room on the desk by one of my front windows. So it's just off to the side of a northeast facing window. So it's between the northeast facing window and some grow shelves. So it gets nice, gentle, bright light. I don't have grow lights shining directly on it or anything else. And it seems to, it's pushing out these huge leaves and it seems to like it there. And I just noticed there's a new vine branching out further down. So yeah, I just think that's such a pretty Hoya. It's probably one of those that you either love or hate. I don't know if I have pictures of what it looked like when it first showed up. That was 5 years ago, and 5 years ago I didn't think I'd be doing this, so I wasn't documenting everything, or even trying to. I was just trying to keep them alive. The leaves are running. The big leaves are running from petiole to tip, a good 7¼ inches or 18½ centimeters petiole to tip. Side to side, they're good 3½ or 9 centimeters. Let's see if this goes any bigger. It's capable of putting out some really humongo leaves. There's 7 inches, about 18 centimeters. It's just, I really like this plant. It's doing very well. And since the warmer weather has arrived, it's putting out vines up here like crazy. So it was quite a thing to, where's that one coming from? Oh my, that's coming from way down there. There's this new little vine coming out here that goes all the way up and starts all the way down there. So yeah, apparently he kind of likes it where he is. I should have close-ups of the leaves over here because I think they're just staggering. There's a slightly raised central vein and 2 slightly raised veins on each side of that, paralleling it of sorts. And then there's some other veins filling in the network. They're just beautiful, I think. And I'm pleased that this one has done this well for this long. So yeah, this one came from the plant farm on their website, Spokane Plant Farm. And this is Hoya latifolia outer variegated. And now it's time for questions from the comments. And the first one comes from Laura Jackson 8556. And she asks, curious why you use all pumice. What can you share about it? And I started using pumice instead of perlite. It has a lot of the same characteristics. I just For some reason, perlite strikes me as being off. I don't know. I really like pumice. As I started using it more, I started appreciating it more. And I also use pumice when I repot my bonsai. So it's like, okay, why am I buying two products that do essentially the same thing? I'd rather buy the pumice. And then I noticed that a couple of people from whom I buy Hoyas also grow them in pure pumice. Pumice is very, very lightweight. As I said, it has some of the same characteristics as perlite. It's very lightweight. You can buy it in different sizes. It has nooks and crannies to hold moisture. And so I just started preferring it. And, why was I buying two products? So I just started, instead of buying any perlite at all, I just started buying pumice. And it's very lightweight. I'm starting to use it more and more because of that. It's also very airy. So yeah, some of the things in pumice, you saw a lot of alocasia in pumice. I've got some Hoyas now growing in pure pumice. It's kind of an experiment, and we're trying it out to see what's going to go on. But it's not terribly expensive. I buy it in two different sizes. I buy a smaller size for my Hoyas and for smaller plants. And I buy some like 3/8 inch size, 1/4 inch size for some of the bigger stuff that I have in self-watering pots and stuff. So yeah, I just kind of prefer it to perlite. I know everybody's a perlite fan, but I'm not particularly a perlite fan. So yeah, that's why. From Bex 1313, they ask, do you use a wicking rope? And I think you were probably asking about some of the plants from last week that are in self-watering pots. The ones I showed last week, the larger ones, do not have wicks. There's a table in them, and there are legs that the table stands on, and the legs are open. So if you put your medium in, make sure it gets down into those legs, and sometimes I'll use the finer pumice as a bottom layer and then the airier pumice on top. The pumice then comes into contact with the nutrient solution and can draw it up. For some of my hanging pots, like this one back here, with those I figured out how much moisture would reside underneath that table. Because these are Hoyas, I didn't want them, it's too easy to overwater them. These pots all have indicators. This one does not. So shy of pulling it out, there's no way of knowing how much moisture is in there. So I figured that would hold 2 cups of liquid and that it was not going to come into direct contact with the substrate. So I worked a wicking cord through the bottom table of these kind of plants, these here. And that has worked fairly well. These also have a drain plug in the bottom. So what I do when I water them is I measure out the 2 cups or 1 pint, or it's like 470 milliliters, and pour it in over the bark and sphagnum or whatever the substrate is. Give it a few minutes to drain through, and then I go underneath with a measuring cup and take out the plug. And the plug has a stem so that it will hold that 470 milliliters or 2 cups, and anything beyond that will overflow it and will drain out the bottom. So I can make sure that the Hoyas that I have growing in these don't have the substrate sitting in water. That's what the wicking cords do for that. So the other plants where there's an indicator, I tend not to use the wicking cord, but plants like this where I have no clue, I use a wicking cord in those. And so the answer is kind of yes and no. Depends on the pot and how and what I'm putting in it, what the substrate is, everything else like that. But yeah, that's that one. And finally from Lisa Glim 9588. And I think she was asking about my bonsai. And she said, will you transplant those trees outside eventually? And I won't transplant them outside, but I will move them outside. Most of the bonsai are outdoor plants. They need the seasons, they need the change of seasons. That's what they do. Some of these that you may have seen in the last video or 2 videos ago have just been moved. So they're in their new longer term facilities. And when I first move them in, I like to, because they're all growing in a pumice and pond and akadama mixture. Sometimes there's a little bit of bark in there, but mainly those 3. I like to keep them nearby so I can keep an eye on them and make sure they're getting a little bit of moisture every day. The pots that they grow in all have super great drainage. Liquid flows right on through, so the roots are in a very airy setup. So I like to keep an eye on them and make sure they're not getting dehydrated or dry or anything else. But most of my bonsai spend most of the year outside over here, some on the front porch. I bring them in here in the winter. Again, this porch isn't heated and it gets lots of light through the winter. I bring them in here so they don't get blown over in the winter storms, and so the deer and the rabbits don't eat them. The deer can, at some points in the winter, they get really desperate for anything that's green, and they'll come up in my backyard and eat whatever they can find. So yeah, I bring them in here just for a little bit of protection, and also make sure that I can make sure that they get watered. As soon as it's not freezing, I come out and make sure I give them a little bit of a drink and get them taken care of. But yeah, they will eventually all move outside, probably in the next week or 2, and hopefully be living a really good life out there. But yeah, so that's the questions from the comments. And now the question for the comments, and it's a simple one. What Hoya have you had the longest? Who's your grandfather Hoya? You saw my obovata and my latifolia, and they're probably the ones I've had the longest, maybe 5 years. I'm trying to think if I've had any longer. Maybe, but those are some of the longest ones, 5 or 6 years. So yeah, in the comments below, tell us what your longest lived Hoya is and how long you've had it. That'll be kind of interesting to see. And as always, I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your time with me this week's end. Please remember to click the thumbs up like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and when you're all done commenting, and if you're on a mobile device, click on that hype button. All those things help convince YouTube that they should recommend my channel to other people who might enjoy it, and it's your way of contributing to the growth of the channel. A lot of the products that you've seen me use are available in my Amazon storefront. There's a link in the description below, or you can scan this QR code with the camera app on your phone to visit the storefront. It's another great way of helping support the channel because I receive a small commission on the sales of items from the storefront. So it's things you might normally buy, and you could buy them through my store and help support us. A lot of you know that I have a relationship with Sansi Corporation, and if you use the link in the description or scan this QR code to visit their website, and if you use this discount code at checkout, you'll receive a 30% discount on the prices you find on the site. My Sansi grow lights have been working really well for me. I'm about to invest in another one, and I think you'll find that their selection and their prices are they're worth checking out. I receive a small commission on the sales, and it's another great way of supporting the channel by buying things you might be shopping for anyway. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can scan this QR code, or there's a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Or if you'd like to work through YouTube to support the channel, there's a thanks button down here, and YouTube handles everything to do with the thanks button. As always, I'm going to post links to a couple more videos over here on the side, and please enjoy the rest of your week's end.